En el año 2015, en Mesa Arriba, Carache, Estado Trujillo, nace el Plan Pueblo-a-Pueblo como una nueva forma de organización, producción, distribución y consumo de alimentos. Una nueva práctica de la economía venezolana que apuesta a la soberanía alimentaria. En este municipio del Estado Trujillo convergen organizaciones de productores libres y asociados quienes planifican la siembra y la cosecha. Los otros núcleos de producción se encuentran en el estado Lara, Yaracuy, Cojedes, Barinas, Portuguesa y Miranda.
Bienvenidos todos los que están presentes, como dijo la compañera, gracias a las personas de Pueblo a Pueblo, siempre un reconocimiento a estos campesinos que aran la tierra día a día para hacer posible esta llegada de hortalizas, estos rubros que nos llegan hoy. Como se dice y todos conocemos, esto no es una mercancía, sino un derecho, son los alimentos nuestros. Como siempre digo en cada reunión, que nosotros nos ahorramos un poco más, porque si siempre lo repito, si vamos a un local ahorita y compramos una cebolla, una papa, un tomate, ¿cuánto dinero no nos quitan? Aquí nos estamos ahorrando algo y más que todo es directamente del campesino. Gracias a ello es posible esta jornada que hacemos aquí en nuestra parroquia San Agustín y el deseo de nosotros que esto se multiplique en otros sectores.
Acá nosotros no creamos formas de organización, sino son las que encontramos y que se le da profundidad, las naturales. Lo importante allí es esa nueva manera de relacionarse campo-ciudad. Y como te lo digo la camarada, si tú recorres estos campos, que lo hemos hecho nosotros, producción hay. El tema es que nunca ha habido una política de distribución. Entonces el pueblo que la tiene que asumir el control, como te lo dije, la tenencia de la tierra hasta el consumo.
Con Pueblo a Pueblo tenemos el gran chance de que estamos haciendo un semillero, por decir algo, y ya sabemos a cómo lo vamos a vender. No como antes, que uno se ponía a hacer un semillero y era la deriva, pues, a como quisiera el intermediario pagarle a uno. Muchas veces, mayormente, dejarlo perder en el terreno, mientras que en las ciudades vale un realero.
Lo que está sembrando cebollín, tiene la cara de la comuna de Sueños de Zamora de Coche, el Panal 2021, la gente de Amalivaca, en Simón Rodríguez, los compañeros que comienzan a ir de San Agustín. Cuando él siembra, él dice esto va para tal parte en Caracas, para Barquisimeto, para Agua, para Yaracuy, entonces eso lo hace, ya te quita un peso de encima.
Claro. Y les llega a precio justo, pues, a los consumidores, que es lo más importante. No están con el intermediario, que es el que gana más que uno, que se tira uno 4 o 5 meses aquí en el campo para producir una mata, y el que gana es el intermediario, pues.
Porque el intermediario, ¿qué hace el intermediario? Enriquecerse más. Porque a ellos le compran un precio y ¿qué hacen ellos? Lo triplican al consumidor, a la ciudad. Entonces por eso que esto es directamente de esa persona que ara la tierra. Directamente ellos decidieron, vámonos con el pueblo organizado, directamente con ellos, porque saben el trabajo de nosotros y el trabajo de ellos también. Hay que valer eso.
Para comprar bueno, bonito y barato.
Papa, zanahoria, pimentón, cebollín, cilantro, tomate, cebolla, remolacha, calabacín, berenjena y pepino son cosechados por las familias agricultoras en estas tierras.
Hicimos los contactos, hicimos a través de ellos una asociación de productores, que en realidad yo participo ahí también porque era algo beneficioso para la comunidad.
Visitando los cultivos de la camarada Josefa, productora que arrima su producción a Pueblo. Estos son los cultivos que cuando son cosechados llegan a nosotros, a diferentes comunidades del centro del país y bueno, especialmente al complejo educativo. Representantes, docentes, trabajadores, donde el comedor también recibe parte de esta producción. Para llegar a Mesa Arriba primero pasamos por Carache, subimos unos 20 minutos y llegamos a este sector de gran potencial productivo. Es importante apoyarlos, es importante tenerlos presentes, porque aquí está el futuro de la soberanía alimentaria de este país.
Y todos sabemos la crisis que estamos pasando. Siempre he dicho que la falta de la arepa de harina pan Hemos aprendido a comer la arepa de yuca, la arepa de auyama, la arepa de plátano. No nos ha caído tan mal en el sentido que hemos aprendido a comer mejor.
Plan Pueblo a Pueblo, San Agustín del Sur, jornada 197. Este es el recorrido que hacen los que participan en la actividad con Unido San Agustín Convive y la cooperativa de consumo también de San Agustín. Comienzan con los plátanos, luego van a la cebolla, luego la papa, la zanahoria, cebolla, auyama, pimentón, tomate, ajo porro y cebollín. Luego se pesa.
El negocio
Anotan, se cancela. Todo es organización, por donde uno lo vea, organización popular. Así es el plan Pueblo a Pueblo.
Aquí en la parroquia del Manicomio, sector Simón Rodríguez, en una jornada de alimentos pueblo a pueblo. Esta jornada la estamos haciendo en combate directo contra la guerra económica. Son las jornadas pueblo a pueblo para que veamos que sí es posible como el pueblo organizado salva al pueblo. Esto que ustedes están viendo aquí son hortalizas que vienen de Carache, de Estado Trujillo, y bueno, vienen de la comuna del Panal 21, el 23 de enero, organizado con la Fundación Alexis Libre.
No vamos a empezar el proceso de venta hasta que no conformemos todos los sacos y garanticemos la distribución más justa y equitativa posible, ¿ok? La prioridad la van a tener las familias que desde el principio han participado y han trabajado para que esto se lleve a cabo, ¿sí va?
Señores, los que están recibiendo la bolsa, por favor, no se hayan engalletado.
No, pero no es. Vamos, pues, vamos.
5 más. Y aquí, Consejo Regional.
Estamos demostrando que con unión y participación podemos hacer las cosas bien.
Con la revolución verdadera, con la revolución sin corrupción, con la revolución sin robo.
Nosotros aquí cada 15 días traemos los alimentos a nuestra comunidad y estamos haciendo bastante, pues. Yo creo que ese es un logro que está teniendo la revolución aquí en nuestro sector.
Y otra cosa que hay que hacer visible es que gracias a estas organizaciones, Pueblo a Pueblo logró un reconocimiento internacional como soberanía alimentaria. ¡Bravo! Porque de repente nosotros como comunidad vemos algo así como insignificante o pequeño, pero no, o sea, gracias a Dios con todo esto sí somos visibles ante el mundo y podemos demostrar que no es lo que dicen en los Estados Unidos los opositores, sino que es una realidad. Nosotros estamos luchando por nuestra soberanía alimentaria y gracias a Dios, Pueblo a Pueblo ha sido reconocido en ese sentido.
El pueblo sabe que hay una guerra en su contra, no solo porque la sufre, sino porque resiste y lucha. Da la pelea y no se rinde. Habiéndole visto la cara de frente al enemigo, ahora toca sacarlo de en medio y construir su propia red de iguales. Un enlace pueblo a pueblo sin intermediarios. Un vínculo directo campo-ciudad para transitar un camino propio de soberanía y liberación.
Hola a todos. Hey everyone, thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed the video. I just wanted to take a moment to let the interpreters introduce themselves. Joel and Sienna, they'll be our interpreters for this evening's webinar. And there's a few logistical pieces that we need to go through with them in order to move forward. So I'll turn it over to Joel and Sienna.
Muchísimas gracias, pues bienvenidos mi gente.
Welcome everyone.
Siena. Yo me llamo Joel, soy uno de los intérpretes al lado de Siena. Y estas son nuestras prácticas que lo comparte nuestra compañera Catalina Nieto. These are some visual representations of the instructions made by our comrade Catalina Nieto and shared with consent. We can go next slide, please. Podemos ir al siguiente dispositivo. Entonces, I will start in Spanish.
I'm going to start in Spanish. So to access interpretation by your computer, you're going to see on the bottom part of your screen a little globe that says interpretation. So please click on it and select your language of preference. And if you're on the computer, you're done. But if you're on your phone, you'll have to go to the bottom of your screen. You'll have to click on where it says participants. You're going to see 3 little dots. You'll click on those 3 points. You'll select interpretation, your language, and you'll have the option to silence the original audio. I would recommend you do that so that you just hear in the language that you'd like to hear. And there you're done. That is how you do it on your phone. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
So to access interpretation via a computer, you should see on the bottom of your screen a little globe. You can go ahead and click on that globe and select your language. And if you're on a computer, that's all you got to do. If you are on a smartphone, you got to go click those 3 little dots on the bottom right-hand corner of your Zoom window. You click those 3 little dots, you click language interpretation, and you select your language. And here, as you can see on the screen, you have at the very bottom the option. We have the option to be able to mute original audio. You can go ahead and mute original audio if you just want to hear the interpreters. We can go to the next slide. I'm just inviting lovingly everybody as they enter in. If y'all could just make sure you're on mute, that would be greatly appreciated. Y un recordatorio con cariño.
Just a loving reminder as people are joining to please put yourself on mute. We're really excited to be able to have this.
And it really takes a commitment to do this, so we're grateful. Toma compromiso para poder entendernos y crear este puente. Entonces, damos gracias que podemos tener este puente y participar de esta manera bilingüe. Next slide, please, Matt. If you can, before you speak, say your name. So for example, I would say, hello, this is Joel. I would like to say, por favor, si pueden, digan su nombre antes de empezar a hablar. Por ejemplo,
If you could please say your name before you start speaking, I would say like, hi, I'm Joel. This helps everyone who's listening through interpretation because they're going to be hearing the same voice over and over. So it can be a little hard to know who's talking.
To interpretation as they only hear the interpreter's voice. Next slide, please. Just some gentle reminders, algunos recordatorios más. Por favor, hablen despacio.
Please speak slowly.
You might see me doing this. This means please slow down. Si me ven haciendo esto, esto significa, por favor, bájenle un poquito el volumen o la rapidez.
Please, this means please slow down. Just to speak a little bit slower than normal. Next slide.
Make sure you speak up. Asegúrense que hablen en voz alta. Next slide, man.
Next slide.
Y un micrófono, one mic. Este es bien importante.
This is really important. We can only interpret for one person at a time.
One person at a time. So just a gentle reminder to please make sure we're speaking one at a time. We're following the one mic rule, so Sienna and I don't have to try to decide who we're going to interpret. Para no tener que decidir quién vamos a interpretar, por favor, tomen su tiempo y hablen solamente una persona a la vez. Siguiente dispositivo, following slide. Lo último es respiren. Last is take a deep breath. We're ready to go, and I'll hand over the mic back to our people. And we can just actually, before I do all that, we're just gonna test. Everyone is able to hear me right now who is listening in Spanish. Can you just give me a thumbs up, Esquisa, if you can hear me okay? My people on the Spanish channel, hearing me okay, being interpreted by Sienna? Awesome, thank you so much. And now we're gonna give that a
te
shot.
estamos escuchando perfectamente.
Perfecto.
Very good. Y ahora vamos a estar probando para mi gente.
So we're going to try the English channel. Can you hear me in the English channel? Can you hear me in English? Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay, everyone. So my name is Okra. I also go by Jabril, and I'm gonna be facilitating this with Esquisa. Esquisa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hola, ¿cómo están? Buenas noches.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I hope everyone is well. My name is Esquisa Umaña. I'm going to be sharing the moderator role with Jabril for this conversation. And to start, I'm really grateful for this space. I want to thank this encounter and everyone who's here to share and listen, and to be able to share what we're working on here. This is Ricardo Miranda on my side from the People to People movement. And on the other side of the screen, Gabriel Gil and Laura Lorenzo are accompanying us. They couldn't be here in physically with us. They're in Yaracuy, but they're going to be participating from there. And they're also another person joining us from People to People is Anna. Anna, could you come on and say hi? So we're going to do just a little introduction. Gabriel, do you want to start?
Ajá, bueno, Gabriel Gil de el Plan Pueblo-a-Pueblo.
From Pueblo-a-Pueblo, the Rural Sovereignty Collective, and the Ecosystem Collective here in Venezuela. Laura Lorenzo, hello. Here from our motherland, Venezuela, from Pueblo-a-Pueblo, a plan for social organization and agricultural production and distribution and healthy eating. Hey, how you doing, Jabril?
Hey, I'm well.
This is Ricardo for Pueblo-a-Pueblo, and well, here we are, dedicated to return to our humanity. Ana.
Okay. Hola, saludos del Plan Pueblo-a-Pueblo.
Hello from Pueblo-a-Pueblo. A little far from where Laura and Ricardo are, but here we are all together. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Okay, thank you from our comrades in Venezuela. Now I'd like to let Jalil and Mama C introduce themselves respectively.
I'd like for Mama C to go first, and I'll go behind her, please.
All right.
Hello, everyone. Hola. I'm Mama C, aka Charlotte Hill O'Neill. I'm presently in Florida as a part of our UACC Heal the Community tour, but I live in Tanzania, Arusha, Tanzania, and I'm co-founder and co-director of the United African Alliance Community Center and we share knowledge for community development. And I'm happy to be here, y'all. Also, former Black Panther.
All right.
Veteran Black Panther, not former.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Thank you, Mama C. I'm Jalil Muntaqim, former veteran member of the Black Panther Party and Black Liberation Army. As a result of my activities in the Black Liberation Army in 1971, I was convicted and sent to prison for 49 years. I've been 49 years at both California and New York prison system. And as a result of my being in prison, I continue to organize. I was organized before I went to prison, organized while I was in prison, and organized after I come out of prison. While in prison, I was the one who initiated the first UN campaign to the United Nations. I started a national prisoners newspaper called Army Spirit. I'm one of the three founders of the Jericho movement, been in existence for 23 years. Jericho movement is a premier organization in support of political prisoners. And I also initiated or a supporter of the initiation of the Spirit of Mandela campaign, which brought in the international jurists who ultimately found the United States guilty of the charge of genocide in 5 particular issues, 5 particular areas. I am honored to be here with you all and being able to share our struggle here in the United States, as well as our struggle throughout the world. It's important for us to be able to develop these type of networks, these type of communications, our struggle and that of those of Latin America or South America, and also the Caribbean, Africa, and also in Europe. This is our goal and objective, to build international foundation for our movement going forward. As we all know, we are all are in the same struggle against the same enemy, white supremacy and capitalist imperialism. And that's our goal and objective, to build a relationship with our comrades, not only here in the United States, Latin America, but throughout the world. I appreciate this opportunity.
And now I would like to introduce and let them introduce themselves as well. We have William Camacaro and Alex Saab. Can y'all introduce yourselves? William, can you go first?
I'm sorry, Alex Saab is in prison. It's William Camacaro and Anthony Dest. But Camacaro will say more about that, my brother.
All right, I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
Hey, first of all, it's nice to see you guys. I'm right now in Venezuela, in Carabobo, state of Carabobo. And basically, yes, my name is William Camacaro. I have been living in the United States for over 30 years. And basically, I have been working in solidarity with Venezuela for 25 years. And right now I'm working with the Alliance for Global Justice and different programs. I'm working with Venezuela, with them, I'm working in Venezuela. Also, I'm developing work with Brazil and also with Peru. And the case of Venezuela for me is extremely important because, of course, I'm Venezuelan and I have been involved with the solidarity for so many years, solidarity with Venezuela from the United States. Basically, I just want to mention the latest attack against Venezuela and also to talk about this very special case that a lot of people know, as Alex Saab case. Thank you.
Gracias.
Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Yo soy Anthony Dest. My name is Anthony Dest, and I'm here on behalf of the Colombia Freedom Collective. We're a group of organizations and collectives that have come together to support political prisoners from the uprising in Colombia during 2021. And I just wanted to say thank you to the organizers, the interpreters, the Spirit of Mandela folks for inviting us to share this space with you. And I'm very much looking forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you all.
Listo, bueno, empezamos entonces.
Yes, and so we can start with a series of conversations. For those you who are joining recently, we have some questions that we're going to share with our panelists, and we're gonna do various rounds of questions, and we're going to start with our comrades here in Venezuela, Laura Lorenzo and Gabriel Gil. And we wanted to ask if they can share with us just a little bit about the history, the story of struggle that's been developing for more than 3 decades. The past, we can say, the present, and what moment we're in now, and also how we're seeing the future of our movements. Laura, you there? Yes. Well, Laura Lorenzo, first of all, for us, it's an honor to be with Charlotte, with Jalil comrades, and I think we're going to learn a lot when we read all the material you guys sent, the bios. We felt so proud. This is a huge commitment and conviction to share with y'all. Really, really, it means a lot, truly. And well, here in Venezuela, in my case, I come from the student movement and the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. Those who were in the communities in Venezuela know that those were really intense years. We presenced as students, you know, in a popular uprising where the people came out to the streets, people that were tired, people that were, you know, what we refer to as a Fourth Republic. You know, it was unsustainable to live the way that things were going in Venezuela, especially our rural people, our farmers who were forced to leave their lands because of the terror and conditions they were living in. And also those of us who were students who had no rights to participate in the governmental process, and we were not respected in this period. And so there were many of students in the movement who were murdered, and that was a popular uprising in 89. And also in 92, we were also present for when Commander Chavez also came out and when things changed. And so, you know, that flavor from that student movement, from that uprising, you know, and you know, Latinx people were fiery and we were out in the streets, right? And I had the opportunity, and as I mentioned, basically forced, you know, and we took the university, in which in reality um, was a dream for my family. Sorry, the interpreter lost audio, but they're saying that they were really forced more than anything from their family, from the land, and was experienced the agricultural structure. And that was for me was my real education. And so I left the university and I incorporated myself in the land committee. And where I live in Yaracuy is a state, it's like 100 square kilometers, but it's a state where from a long time ago, since the time of the independence, from the Zamora hit, our people from this state have always, you know, been on their feet and been in struggle. We've always been in struggle. And of course, in the 20th century, at the end of it, we really found ourselves in an intense land struggle in 96. We began coming together more and more in that committee, and our objective was to occupy land, to hold it against the police and the different corporations and landowners who were trying to lay claim to it. And people in movement organized, and under this land committee took some of that land. And when Chavez came to power in 99, we had the opportunity in this case, in this particular case, I would love to share more of this struggle. I was the first woman who, with Chavez, was appointed to the, in this case, the director
Instituto Agrario
of
Nacional.
the National Agrarian Institution. And we began allotting land to the peasants, to the agricultural farm workers. And we continued to have that opportunity to meet more and more people around the country. And those were also moments of intense struggle. Let's remember that when Chavez was never able to freely govern from the beginning. There were always intense moments which we lived in those moments. You know, in 99, the struggle for the land intensified. There was backing for
No de todas las autoridades. Es así como comenzamos con todo un trabajo.
Okay, so people still there though.
Disculpe, se está escuchando un audio, ajá.
No, we finished, but they still down there chit chat.
Oh, okay.
And I can hear, you know, for both groups.
Peace, man. Can you mute everyone, please?
I'm in that parking lot way over there. I'll see you later. Good seeing you, though. All right.
Disculpen. Por acá. Continuamos.
Sí, compa.
Laura Lorenzo. Bueno, entonces, como les decía, fueron esos tiempos fuertes de organización, sobre todo.
And those were intense times of organizing. In that situation, we had to organize in the lands, the agricultural lands where the peasants were. And in those times, with Chavez, we had the Samoran plans. And here in this state, we had a team, it wasn't anything particular, of comrades who were finding ourselves with these dreams, these strong dreams of what a revolution is. And what was the practice was the statement we made, which is well known. And that's, I'm sorry, their audio keeps cutting out. We had a process to obtain the land for the people, and we were able to, in that moment, independent as President Chavez was, struggling against the repressive elements in the state, and we were able to get more than 100,000 hectares, and maybe in other lands that doesn't seem like much, but 100,000 hectares, yeah, that's a lot. That's very important. And that was a big win for us. And after that, you know, we had to assume, you know, the responsibility to our people in terms of what were the first companies that we created that were nationalized when he sent Alca out. And that's where we created the company, and we were able to really take on that responsibility. And we've always been a group that we would say has to be present, that has to be with the people, living with the people, sharing with the people. And if we have a responsibility to the state, it didn't matter. Well, we had to do everything that was possible to help, to visibilize our people. And that's what we did until 2014, when we were in different activities. And at that point, we decided this experience that we're working now, which is plan people to people or town to town. And this is a plan for the production. This is the plan for production, consumption, and distribution of nutritious food. And we've always said at a certain point, we were going to get out of the institutions. And Chavez always said, we have to go back to the people. We have to get to the catacombs, and from there, continue moving forward with fortitude with this plan, which at this moment is, we're gonna be turning 8 years in this work. We've been continuing the work of agricultural production in various places in our motherland. And there's a lot of objectives which we're visibilizing, as always, our people, more than 4 million kilograms of produce that we have distributed from the rural areas in our networks, you know, and people who are free and freely associated in this Project Samaran, who would say land and people that are free in that war,
1959, y ese alimento que producimos en el
And
campo
this food
llega
that we produce reaches urban centers, and that's very important, that we create spaces for communal consumption and food access. So these wins have strengthened us, strengthened our compromise. How do we see ourselves moving forward into the future? We're going to continue. We've passed through a lot of really hard moments, and during this process, and of course the death of our commander, and it's been moments of war. Even though there might not be arms, but it really is a war. They have controlled us through sanctions, through economic sanctions, through hunger, and people have had to resist. We have had to invent a response to each aggression we have suffered. We have, as we say, inventing to continue moving forward, to continue growing. So that's the root of this project, people to people. Thank you so much, Laura. I want to ask you the same question, Gabriel. And we have about 9 minutes for you to respond. Laura took some of my time. This is Gabriel Gil. I come from the campesino movement. I'm from a town that's like 150 kilometers in the west of the country. And it's there's a lot of discrimination here against the campesinos, the peasants. And this called us to study. And this is how I met Laura in the School of Agriculture. It was a study that really brought campesinos to actually study here at this university. And it brought them into studies about the fight over land. And the largest states were really controlling the rural areas. And campesinos were cultivating the majority of the food, but there was so much discrimination, and they were working under very horrible conditions. And so, like Laura was saying, we were living in the university, and there was a mobilization over anger, over the hunger and the neoliberal policies of the government in this moment. So there was a mobilization. This was the first uprising against the IMF and the World Bank policies. So we were kind of the start of that. We were in the streets, and there was a response of a massacre of the Venezuelan people. Basically over, it was a violent repression of the people. And during this time, basically, the only group who came out was the student movement. There was so much violence against the people of Venezuela. And really, they applied neoliberal policies in this moment. Even though we continue to be an oil-driven country, there was an accumulation, basically. The situation was very difficult in a country that was relying on imports in the oil. So we were really fighting against this system. There were not political formations or schools for the left. So we went out to the streets with a conviction to really start the process of consciousness building and formation for our people. And it was nonviolent, but it did turn violent as a result of the repressive state. So in 1999, Chavez came into power, and just want to share a little anecdote. They looked for agricultural engineers in the university. And so that's where we encountered each other in the political structure that was actually in favor of our political subjects, our people. And so in the midst of the construction of food sovereignty in Venezuela in 1999, we actually entered into regional institutions with the premise, and Ricardo can affirm this as well, really to start social projects actually in favor of the Venezuelan peasant or farmers. And Chavez, it's worth it to really look at these wins that he had. So we actually started administrative procedures in favor of the people. Like Laura said, under the Fourth Republic, almost all of the legal mechanisms we had were in favor of the largest states. And so that's what changed with the Decree 90 that Laura talked about. This allowed estates, over 160 estates, that has like 700 million. It has the best land in the country. That was really the heart of the plantation of the estates in the country. And so what does this do? This basically, they have given this land to foreign companies and to Venezuelans, corporate Venezuelans. And it was very discriminatory practices against the farmers of Venezuela. But this law actually opens space for campesinos.
No sé si las tenemos ahorita, pero un extranjero que demuestre experiencia, entonces se le va a entregar tierra plana, básicamente, con agua corriente todo el año, se le va a entregar casas.
So we're actually going to give you houses, we're going to give you access to water and campesinos. The important reflection is that the popular movement does have to try to insert itself into the government where they are, to be able to politically structure these social, to restructure social movements. It's very difficult because, of course, we were then against power, but within the government structure in favor of the Venezuelan people. Thank you. Gabriel will pass you back the word. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gabriel and Laura and Esquisa. I'd like to pass it over to Mama C so she can give us an overview of her struggle and what her struggle has been in the past and what she's dealing with right now and what it's looking like in the future, and what her struggle has been, as a Panther and as someone who left the United States to live internationally, and just, we can give you about 10 minutes to speak on that, Mama C, and then we'll go ahead and pass it over to Brother Jalil.
Okay, and I can't, speak on this as an individual because I've always been partnered with my husband, Brother Pete O'Neill, who is in exile, and we've been together and struggling and not just surviving, but thriving for 53 years together. I think that it's very important that young people, not only in America and other westernized societies, realize that they can thrive, and when I went to Venezuela and met these young people who are dedicated to farming, I thought that was the most beautiful, beautiful thing, and this is something that you know, is a part of our struggle, because all of that, so much of that knowledge of farming has affected people in America in particular. You know, the youth aren't learning how to equip themselves where they could rise above what some people call food deserts and some people call food apartheid, you know, and we can learn so much from the people of Venezuela because they have embraced lifting up their communities through food, through the barter system, which is so intrinsic to who we are as people, as communities all over the world. Yes, Brother Pete has been in exile for 50 years, and we've been living in Tanzania, but we still live the principles that we learned and lived as members of the Black Panther Party, and the utmost thing was community service. And this is the thing that we have passed on to hundreds of youth, I dare say thousands of youth over all these years, is the importance of community service and the importance of walking through the world as members of the global community. This is something that it's a struggle, you know, especially when young people from the States who might be involved in the gangs and all this, when they come to Tanzania and they're able to, we couple them with the youth in Tanzania, and they're able to rip off these blinders that have kept them locked down in urban areas in America, you know, and we let them know that, hey, there's another way to live. You know, you can learn these skills where, you know, whether it's carpentry or farming or plumbing or whatever, you can learn these skills. You can live more independently within the urban centers of America. And so much of that we can learn from the people of Venezuela. You know, we're able to, oh, I was looking at the chat. Yeah, we're able to make sure that young people understand the consequences of not embracing Mother Earth. You know, and when I was in Venezuela, I'm telling you, I was so inspired, and I continue to be inspired. There was people from the Amazon jungle, y'all, who they told us about their trials and tribulations with dealing with these corporations that are cutting down all these trees. When the brother and sister were talking about their lives in the 80s and the struggles that they went through in the 80s, it has always been like that in America, always. Whether it's police violence, whether it's being discriminated against, like they're discriminated against because they're so-called peasants or in the farming community, it's always been like that, especially for Black and brown people in America. So the thing is, we got to build this international solidarity more and more and more, and it's visits, it's exchanges as much as we can, whether it's people coming from the urban areas in America and learning from the farmers in Venezuela, or, well, I don't know if y'all want to come to America, not Venezuelan comrades, you know, but it can be a one-way exchange, you know, and, you know, we got to start living more as brothers and sisters, as comrades. We got to build that back up again the way I remember it as a teenager and as a member of the Black Panther Party, where, you know, we embraced all progressive people, and we got to learn from each other. You know, y'all are experts at farming. When me and Brother Pete first went to Tanzania, you know, we grew up in the cities, but we had to learn how to be farmers. We had to learn how to grow our own food and raise all our own animals and all that. And the elders of the community, they lifted that knowledge up, and they want us to teach their youth, because so much of the culture has been destroyed because of people like missionaries, you know, and so much of the culture, even the spiritual culture, which I think is very, very important, our spirituality, because when you're spiritual, you recognize the power of the earth. We just got to channel that power. You know, I'm so passionate about this, and I got to speak on hip hop too, because hip hop is also one of the things that can build solidarity all over the world, because hip hop is in every corner of the world. We as elders need to embrace that more and to encourage the hip hop community. I'm still in contact with some of the Venezuelan hip hop musicians, you know, and they do conscious hip hop. We got pockets of artists in the States that do conscious hip hop, and in Africa. We got to encourage them, y'all, to embrace the consciousness, the spirituality of hip hop, because that's something that we can also build community with. I hope I ain't ran out of time. Did I run out of time? Because, you know.
Nah, you right on time. You right on time with it.
Yes.
About 3 minutes.
I could speak on this forever and ever, because I see the effectiveness of it. I see the effectiveness of our young people, especially in the West, learning farming, systems of farming, and to, what do we used to call it, liberate land in the urban centers that have been so effective, so affected by gentrification. And we can learn that from our brothers and sisters, our comrades in Venezuela. And I give all praises to y'all. I know y'all struggle, but y'all keep going. Y'all always keep going the same way we keep going. So a luta continua, y'all. Yeah, I give thanks.
Give thanks. Give thanks, Mama C. Appreciate the word.
Yeah.
Mama C, thank you, Mama C. I really appreciate your passion for this work. You know, we all have passion for this work. We was young teens when we first joined and became members of the Black Panther Party. And as a result of our engagement in the Black Panther Party, we was inspired. We inspired by the people. The people inspires us, and we inspire the people. The people of Venezuela definitely inspires us. Why? Because they have an understanding that within the course of their dealing their struggles, right, they have to feed their people. They have to nourish their people. And by nourishing their people, not only politically, but nourishing their people with food, right? They're nourishing a nation, right? And for us, it is extremely important for us to do that. You talk about gentrification, Mama C, and that's what's going on in our communities, Black communities across the country, Black and brown communities across the country. They're gentrifying our country, gentrifying our communities. They're basically creating a condition for displacement of our people right across this country, so they can move them back into what they call a slave system, what I call a penal slave system, based upon the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Yes, hold on.
Right? And mass incarceration. And for us, it was important for us to raise these issues in the international community. And in October 2021, we was able to have what we call international tribunal. And in the international tribunal, we was raised the question of genocide against Black, brown, and indigenous people. We're saying in our argument today, and we're telling the world today, that in the 400 years of white supremacy, that we have engaged in a process of genocide, right? And we're engaging this argument, right? We're moving this argument forward because we recognize that within the 400 years, 500 years for indigenous people, the Native Americans, have suffered white supremacy, right? That we have recognized that white supremacy has always been and will always be one opposing people of color. People of color. And this is the reason why Black people, brown people, indigenous people in this country has been under oppression, U.S. oppression for the last 400 years. And now we're in the process of rebuilding a movement based upon the International Tribunal, who came to a decision on October 25th.
Un movimiento
October 25th, 2021, that the United States have been found guilty of genocides against Black, brown, and indigenous people in 5 particular categories. The categories are political prisoners, right? The incarceration of political prisoners in the United States, right? Based upon health inequities. You know, white people live twice as long as Black people in this country, right? Why is that? Because we're being discriminated against as a result of white supremacy and the policies of white supremacy that oppresses Black, brown, indigenous people, right? Also environmental racism, right? Our communists in Venezuela, they have found the way to ensure that people are being fed in their communities. In our communities, we are suffering environmental racism, where people have suffered all kinds of illnesses as a result of pollution in our communities, right? Not only in terms of community, as the most recent was Jackson, Mississippi, or the water conditions there, or Flint, Michigan, water conditions there, right? Lead poisoning in our community, right? All kinds of forms of pollution and basically deteriorating social order, material social order in our communities, right? Police killings, right? They found guilty in regards to police killings. Why is it in the last 50 years, our population, talking about Black people populations, has not rose over 12%? 12%, right? They are marginalizing us as a people in this country and prohibiting our own growth and prosperity, right? That's the reason why we make the charge of genocides, right? Cumulatively, everything that they have done to us as a people in this country amounts to genocide. All right. Not only that, there was also in regards to mass incarceration. Mass incarceration. We have 12.13% of the population, and we're 57% of the prison population is Black people. Right. Another 30% of the population, the prison population, is brown people and Asian people, right, and indigenous people. So now that's what that tells us, right? That tells us they have population control. That's basically what it is, to contain a movement and use mass incarceration as part of that process. That's what we're arguing against and been fighting for, right? Mass incarceration, police killings, and lastly, the issue that we brought on this campaign was the question of, environmental racism, public health, political prisoners, mass incarceration, and police killings, right? Those are 5 issues that the international jurors have found the United States guilty of and qualified it as they've been engaging in the process of genocides against Black, brown, and indigenous people for the last 400 years. So now what we're going to do, we're going to create a means and mechanism to build our movement, build our struggle with the international community, and build into what we call a People's Senate, right? We are tired of living under a system of white supremacy. We are tired of suffering the conditions of genocide in this country. And so therefore, we have to do is create alternative to the existing governing processes from which we have suffered for the last 400 years. So we're in the process now of building what we call a People's Senate, right, across this country as an alternative to how we govern ourselves. We have to figure out new ways to govern ourselves, and we're going to build these People's Senates and have ambassadors across this country and also in the international community. We can rebuild what they call a common turn, where it hadn't been in existence when, I guess you could say, when the Soviet Union was in existence, right? An international community, an international communist community, right? And I say this in all due respect in terms of building communal, intercommunal relationships amongst ourselves and also around the world. That's our goal and objective, right? It's important for me to tell the international community and tell our comrades down in South America, right, that our freedom depends on your freedom. Your freedom depends upon our freedom. And our position is this here, that when Black people are free, the world is free. That's our position. And you have to understand that, right? Because why? We are in the belly of the beast, right? We understand that the United States imperialism has been a scourge. White supremacy has been a scourge on the planet. Scourge on the planet. The planet has been suffering as a result of imperialism, Zionism, and white supremacy, right? We're going to have to call that out. And in no uncertain terms, that is the horror of the planet, right? And we have to deal with that issue. And so for us, it's very important for the world to know that we are engaged in a continuance, as Mama say, a luta continua, right? A continuance of struggle, right? From the time of Armistead to the time of the Black Panther Party, to the time of the Black Liberation Army, to we are today and rebuilding a new movement of liberation, a new movement of independence, right? And that's what our golden objectives today. And so it was important for me to say that and to our comrades in Venezuela, right? I'm asking you to translate this to all of South America, that we are in this struggle together, right? And when we are free, the world will be free. Understand that, because we are in the belly of the beast, and we're asking for your support for the struggles that we engage here in the United States, right? Because we will reach the brunt of fascist repression, in the course of our struggle. Know that. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Jalil, so much for your words. We're gonna go ahead and move to the next question. We got Esquisa is next. She's gonna ask our Venezuelan comrades a question.
Sí, ahora
Yes.
queríamos justamente.
Now we wanted to actually talk about, this question that was already put on the table of empire and imperialism, and we wanted to ask Laura and Gabriel. Well, if with 5 minutes, because time is short, if they could comment a little bit about how the U.S. empire and imperialism has been materially impacting us in this process and in these struggles that you guys have developed. Laura? This is Gabriel Gil. I think it's my turn first. Okay, yeah, amongst both of you. Let's try to keep it to 5 minutes because we still have another question afterwards. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Bueno, de Charlotte y de Jalil.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mama C and Jalil.
Inspiradora para nosotros también.
And it's super inspiring. With so much respect, we really appreciate all the sacrifices you have made for the global South. And there's good to remember that there's people in the empire that are attacked, and that we're also attacking it from inside and outside, and we are the global South. And the strategy is outside of the geographical. This is a political conviction, cultural and social conviction that we have to find each other. We have to find each other.
Colocado varios tips interesantes sobre qué significa.
Mentioned several questions about this question of empire imperialism and the impact that it's had. Jefferson, Morgan, Andrew Jackson, all of these slave owners, right? Slave drivers, assassins, murderers.
Conspiraron también con Jefferson estando de todas.
Jefferson, even in Andrew Jackson, when they were in power, they actually attempted to kill Bolívar, to stop his movement of independence. And the whole 20th century, it has been a situation of empire against Venezuela in an extraordinary way. As Harvey talks about the dispossession that Harvey talks about, the way that they've come after our petroleum after 1976 until now. I'm sorry, 1876, more than 100 years of aggression against Venezuela. They imposed roles through the international arena, and we were not permitted under any conditions to be able to develop railways, trainways, to develop agriculture. We were never allowed to be independent, and they extracted the petroleum from more than 100 years, and they continue to do so. And so the empire and imperialism is
agresor. Por ejemplo,
is our aggressor. And these 100 different barrels of petroleum, only a few would be distributed locally before. I'm sorry, the audio keeps cutting out. But basically, only a few of the Venezuelans would before be able to access the petroleum, and it would always be the elite in the country that would be able to access that resource. Even beyond the empire, even in the Chavez government, only 33 barrels of oil get to the people of Venezuela. And obviously we can't clearly define that because, the expert
intergovernmental body on that says that we are not greenhouse emitting country. We are controlling some emissions. And so that means that we're not burning petroleum. We're not burning gasoline. But what it is that it's financing empires and capitalism in the periphery of the world, Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The underdevelopment, there's no real proposal within capitalism to this question of human development. There's been no development, no. In that capitalistic framework, we've been stuck in this place as the global south. And finally, to give it over to Laura, now the government has been getting adjusted, and now, you know, we still have this threat of extraction, of this petroleum extraction, and now we have even a more dangerous threat now, which is the intent for agricultural extraction. And there's, with all the contradictions that exist, remember, even now there's different blocks. You know, there's a revolutionary government that are in our favor. I think Maduro is in that sector. He's supported our program, but there's another sector in black that has been that may permit extraction, agricultural extraction. And it's all right. This is already destroying Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil as well. And this is a struggle that we need to implement. There's a threat for these big corporate agricultural companies, soy, palm oil, and other things to come in to Venezuela and to create even deeper conditions of misery. And this is Laura, and then if Gabriel was able to be heard.
Laura, Gabriela.
This is Laura. Gabriel in that time explained what it means in imperialism in that time, and we've said, you know, that we need to fortify all the people. Yeah, what Laura explained in a really concise way is what it means to live under empire and imperialism in our countries here in Venezuela. And well, you know, even from before Venezuela, even in these Spanish so-called colonies, we've had these nations, these African nations, indigenous nations, Asian nations. And yeah, there's something about being in the tropics that, as Gabriel said, Simón Bolívar, there have been multiple aggressions against our people throughout history. And it's been a long history. And there was a long history of struggle even against Spain as well. And understanding the richness of our people and our country is when the empire got here, the gringos, the Americans, the French, the Spanish, and even beyond all that, we continue to be here, our people, our nation, our community. And the important thing right now, even these last years, what we have survived, they've tried to have us on our knees. But we continue as a nation to be here, putting in work, and we want to rescue and continue. And what our comrade said is very important, especially that solidarity piece. We can come together, you know, and we need to visibilize, you know, this plan people to people. And as we've met with Mama C and Jalil and how they've said it, we have to continue to find each other beyond any symbolic action. We need to find how we visibilize the experience of our people and come together. That even despite the wars and the challenges, we continue to be here and we continue to be in the struggle for history. And we will succeed. This is not a dream. Food sovereignty is not some dream. This is what somebody said in the video. They took away the different source of genetically modified food and we replaced it with organic food. We started making arepas with organic food and cornmeal. And, you know, so what is empire? What does it do? Sometimes it tries to penetrate us culturally, change our cultural patterns and our cultural ways and take that from us. thinking that it's better to live their way, whether that's going to the United States or eating their food. We have to come together and remember and to continue learning what we're doing and continue together. Thank you so much.
To allow our guest speakers to 5 minutes each to speak on what they came here to talk about. Particularly, one of them came to talk about some political prisoner, and that's being held in the U.S., Alex Saab. And then our other comrade is here with us from the collective in Colombia, who came to speak on that as well. So I would like to open it up to our comrade.
Chokwe Lumumba, basically, he wrote a very powerful statement in support of Venezuela at that moment as a mayor. I want to say that that was in 2014. He died in 2014. And maybe 2 months before his death, I remember that I sent a message to him requesting him a message of solidarity with Venezuela. In 2014, as people know, we have the Guarimba, and a lot of the opposition demonstrating in the fancy places against the Venezuelan government. But in the mainstream media, everybody was thinking that the entire country was on fire. Chokwe was someone that would support Venezuela. And in those days that we have a lot of people from the opposition demonstrating in those fancy places in Caracas and other places, very strong statement supporting Venezuela. He died just 2 months later. And I remember that Cali Acuno told me that was strange. His death was extremely strange for his followers in Jackson, Mississippi. Also, I want to mention in the Spirit of Mandela, we have right now a genocide that is taking place against 40 countries that are under sanction from the United States. Around 16 countries are in Africa. 16 countries that are under sanction from the United States are in Africa. Somalia, Ethiopia, Mali, and Angola, Zimbabwe. So it's a big number of countries. And in this continent, we have Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. So in the spirit of Mandela, Venezuela has been supporting Mumia Abu-Jamal struggle. Venezuela has been supporting Mumia Abu-Jamal and also have been supporting the Puerto Rican political prisoners. And it's very important to know this because right now, Oscar Lopez Rivera, that is a former political prisoner, is one of the persons that is leading the campaign to free Alex Saab. That is extremely important. In the spirit of Mandela, also, I really want to say hello to Mimi, to Mami, I'm sorry, forgot, Mami C, Mami, oh, sorry. Yeah, we went to Venezuela together with, and also with Matt, Mayor, we went to Venezuela. I don't know if you remember, but we went to Veroes, and we basically, let me see when was that. We went, I'm looking for my desktop. So we went to Veroes to celebrate Eco-Socialist Conference, Mama C. Remember that?
Hey, William.
That was very good.
Hey, William.
And also, I just want to mention that right now, I'm just ending, that right now, Alex Saab, as a Mumia Abu-Jamal, as a Oscar Lopez Rivera, is a political prisoner from the United States just because he was buying food, medicine to Venezuelan people in a moment of pandemic, when we have a pandemic, and when Venezuela, basically, when the economy warfare was causing to the Venezuelan people. That's why he's in jail right now. And just today, K-Bear released a bunch of documents that prove he's innocent and that prove that he was a diplomat. So I just inviting everybody to check the internet, because those documents are already in different social media. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Thank you. And Anthony, could you grace us with 5 minutes of your time, please, to speak on your struggle?
Absolutely. No, I just wanted to thank you all for opening up this space and inviting us to participate. I wanted to share a little bit of news from the other side of the Venezuela-Colombia border, where some people call it the Israel of Latin America. And I wanted to speak to folks about an uprising that took place last year. It started on April 28th, 2021. And this was one of the longest rebellions in Colombian history that took place last year. And thousands of people came out into the streets to protest against neoliberal reforms. And even after the state repealed the laws that it was trying to push down the throats of people that were the most marginalized society, folks stayed in the street. And why did they stay in the street? Because of the enduring state violence against folks that were out there protesting. It was a remarkable thing to see throughout almost 3 months of protest, how folks formed what are called resistance points, where they created spaces for freedom, where everything that the capitalist state had taken away from them, security, food security, education, cultural events, political educational opportunities, all of these things, people started to organize behind the barricades and create that for themselves. And I think importantly, they created the conditions for the first progressive government in Colombia's history, right? And I was really appreciative to hear of the colleagues from Venezuela talk about the Caracazo and its influence in Venezuelan history. And I think it's important to think about last year's uprising in Colombia somewhat along those lines, in the spirit of these revolts against neoliberalism throughout the hemisphere. Since then, more than 300 people are facing charges for participating in the uprising. And the Colombia Freedom Collective has come together in the last few months or so to support political prisoners from one of the resistance points in Cali, Colombia, which is the city with the second largest Black population in Latin America. The Colombia Freedom Collective consists of the Black Alliance for Peace, the National Lawyers Guild San Francisco Bay Area chapter, the U.S. Peace Council, Woodbine here in New York City, the Comisión Intereclesial de Justicia y Paz in Colombia, the Punto de Resistencia del Paso del Aguante, and Trabajo y Justicia. And what we're doing is working directly to provide legal support for political prisoners who have maintained their innocence since they were arrested in October, and they've been in pre-trial for nearly a year without the case being brought against them. And we're just working with a few folks. We're starting small, but we are looking to kind of build solidarity around the issues that are facing political prisoners throughout the country. And we invite you all to check out our website. I just put it through the chat. I really appreciate the space to do this. We've got a fundraiser going right now where you can make tax-deductible donations. And in the coming weeks, we're going to start putting up more profiles of the political prisoners and the folks that we're working with. So just thank you all very much. And we greatly appreciate this space. Saludos.
Thank you so much, Anthony. I guess with that too, I just wanted to ask Mama C and Jalil specifically about how U.S. imperialism is specifically affecting new Africans and African people in the United States and abroad. And we're going to try to limit the answers to these questions to 5 minutes per person. And just so we can we have one more question to ask at the end of the webinar. It's about international solidarity. So we can kind of leave the remainder of the until 6 p.m. to answer that question. And hopefully have like a 5 to 10 minute Q&A period from 6 to 6:10. So I just wanted to leave space right now to, yeah, go ahead, Mama C, you got a question?
You know, the thing that is blowing my mind when I'm on tour and going to all these different cities is the fact that internal imperialism in the form of gentrification is just displacing so many people in the urban areas. You know, there are so many homeless people, you know, who are living in these little plastic lean-tos. And I already mentioned about the food apartheid that's going on. All of that is a result of US imperialism, internal imperialism, you know, and that's something that we really need to consider. That, yeah, when you always think of imperialism, you think of countries and peoples who are being affected outside of America, but it's happening there. And it's a crazy situation. And so many youth don't know what to do. So many elders are being displaced, you know, to the point where I say, where's everybody going to? You know, culturally, through food, of course, the police, all of that is a matter of internal imperialism. So I have to keep saying that we have to have a practical approach to all of this that's going on. And one of the practical ways are these exchanges of information where people have to learn how to grow food. We have to learn to liberate, you know, some of these lots that are in the urban community, liberate them and start growing food, you know, and start having practical education and exchanges, you know, of expertise. You know, to me, that's a practical application, you know, of how we can turn so much of this around. Because, yeah, this internal imperialism is just destroying so many people, giving so many people, you know, no means to have hope in their lives. So many young people, you know, who are just falling through the cracks, but they can be lifted up if we have a system of mentorship. We got to do that, y'all. We got to have these exchanges, especially among the young people. And I don't know if I've taken up my 5 minutes, but that's something that I'm very passionate about. And it's something that can be done. We can have practical applications of that. We can have all of our lofty words and all of our dreams and all of that, but we got to bring it down to practicalities. And we can do that. We can do that through exchanges. It don't have to be real big delegations. It should be people who are chosen, who have a seriousness about what they're supposed to do. They go learn about farming, you know, do things like that, and then come back into the communities and teach that. And there's youth who are in the States and other parts of the world who know things like how to code, you know, things like coding and how you can use the internet in practical ways where you can have things like these Zoom gatherings and all that. We got to be able to utilize that more. You know we do. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you, Mama C. There's so things have been raised in the last couple of speakers here. The last people who presented And I like to just try to sum of that up if I possibly can. One of the things that was raised by my dear comrade William Camacaro was that we are dealing with the issues of imperialism and how imperialism is attacking people of color around the world, right? That's white supremacy attacking people of color around the world. Now, this is not a new phenomenon. This is an old phenomenon. It started in 1492 with the papal bull of Frederick VI, where he told the Portuguese and he told the Spanish to go around the world and conquer those who are not adherent to that Christian Catholic faith, right? And he said they said anyone who is not adherent to those Christian Catholic faiths are considered to be heathens, and that by virtue of them being heathens, they should be conquered. That's what happened to the Aztecs. That's what happened to the Incas. That's what happened, if we bring it up forward, that's what's happened to today with the Cherokees. And my own great grandmother, the Creek, Mosoki Creek, out of Alabama, right? When we had ideas, false ideas of white supremacy, false ideas of manifest destiny, false ideas of the Monroe Doctrine, where they feel they have an inherited right to go out and conquer other people and actually annihilate people, annihilate whole peoples, right? They've been doing this for 400 years. And we're saying here in the United States, we're done. We're tired of it, right? We know that based on the virtue of the verdict of the international jurors on October 25th, 2021, finding the United States guilty of commission of genocides, not only for us in the Americas, but throughout the world, engaged in the only country that has bombed a Nagasaki and Hiroshima, right? Atomic bomb. The only country that wasted 1 million people by carpet bombing Iraq within 2 months. 1 million people taken off the planet, right? This is the insight. This is the mindset of this imperialist beast that we're dealing with here, right? This creature, this barbaric entity that we call the United States government, right? Imperialism is something that has to be in existence by virtue of the 740 billionaires in the United States who has a accumulated wealth of $6.2 trillion. All the wealth of Western Europe is in the hands of 740 people here in the United States, right? And we are complicit because we allowed it to happen. We are complicit because we are silent. This hoarding of wealth. Even if you're a religious person, under any religious, that's hoarding the wealth is a sin. Is that right? And if hoarding wealth is a sin, then we live in a sinful country, right? Because they hoard wealth at the expense of people of color around the world. We are engaged in the struggle today, right? My comrade brother, Kamara, has stated, in opposing, we are anti-imperialists, right? We are anti-capitalist, right? We are anti-white supremacists. We have to make that known throughout the world, right? That is the part of where we can unite with others around the world, particularly people of color around the world, who are also fighting against colonialism, fighting against neocolonialism, and fighting against white supremacy and capitalist imperialism, right? We need to engage, and this is an important process what we're involved with today, right? Because it allows us to raise these questions of our own commonality in regards to what is universal in our struggle. The universal in our struggle that we're fighting against white supremacy, universal in our struggle that we're fighting against imperialism, universal struggle that we're fighting against capitalist exploitation and the hoarding of wealth, right? By a few to the detriment of the many. To the point where they are destroying the planet. Let's keep that in mind, right? They have polluted the planet to the point where they are looking to go someplace else, trying to go to Mars, to the moon, someplace to get out of here because they know that they have destroyed this planet. So our fight is for the next generation. As Mama C said, our lucha continua. We'll continue our struggle. And so for us here in the United States, we're going to build the People's Senate. We're going to organize alternative institutions. We're going to build what we call decolonization programs. As Mama C said, imperialism has colonized our mentality, our thinking, particularly people of color here in the United States. Within the border, 3,000 miles to 2,000 miles that we call the United States. Original name is what? Turtle Island for the indigenous people, right? The original name of this territory. And we're going to resurrect, as Mama C says, we're going to resurrect a new understanding, a new consciousness of liberatory consciousness, where we say we are our own liberators. So if we don't liberate ourselves, no one else will. No one else will. All right? So it's time for us to recognize that we are building international solidarity with our comrades based upon the universal ideals that we are fighting against white supremacy, imperialism, and capitalist exploitation and hoarding of wealth, right? Let's understand that. And we're going to understand that we have the foundation for building international solidarity, right? With our comrades in Latin America, our comrades in the Caribbean, our comrades in Africa. And what comrade Camacaro said, we're in 60 countries, and 40 countries in Africa who are suffering imperialism, right? The brunt of Afro-Con, right? Setting up bases in Africa. Right? They're trying to recolonize Africa again. We have to understand that. As they deteriorate conditions of black people here in the United States, right? With mass incarceration, or the degrees from which there's health inequities, right? White people live twice as long as black people. Why is that? Right? Police killing. They're killing us every day in this country. Sometimes we heard about it, sometimes more often we do not. Every day, they're killing black, brown, indigenous people in this country. That's genocide. Genocide. We have to repeat that over and over again until it's really understood that it's deliberate and it's intentional for the purpose of maintaining a system of white supremacy. That's our confrontation. That's our challenge. That's our challenge. And so this webinar is extremely important. We need to have dozens of them so we can begin to have this kind of international communications and dialogue with our comrades who we know are fighting against the same enemy that oppresses us here within Turtle Island. Understand that, right? And I want to thank you for this opportunity again, right? To our comrades in Latin America, South America, for stepping up. Our comrades in Venezuela, our comrades in Cuba, our comrades in Nicaragua, and other parts of Latin America. We are joined like this. Our hands were joined like this. Brotherhood and solidarity. Understand that. We got to build these communications. We got to build this solidarity. We got to understand our struggle is one. It's one. One enemy. We got to fight that wholeheartedly. Thank you, my brothers.
Thank you, Jalil. Thank you, Jalil. Yes, quizá we have Ricardo and Ana. So I'll let you go ahead and ask them what international solidarity looks like.
Gracias. Sí, como la
Yeah, the last question, we wanted to respond it between Ricardo and Ella Felician from Pueblo-a-Pueblo, and it would be like in the previous event, what is the most effective way to create and cultivate this international solidarity, especially like in this context within sanctions in Venezuela, and the difficulty of, just the weight of the international finance system and sanctions. All right, well, wow, I'm so happy that we found each other, that we came together to talk. Jabril and Jalil and Mama C. And so, as always, our point of reference is our people, our nations. And so solidarity is amongst the nations and us there in our communities, and really talking about our roles. Here we're having this role, that continuum, that historic continuum of struggle. And as we say, we have the responsibility in this historic moment in which we're in. I was just mentioning to the comrade here that it's very, very interesting that the nations would find each other, and that their children, us, find ourselves together here as a point of reference. Always that point of reference is our people, our nations, their histories, their rights, their ways. And as our comrade said, we are one. As Jalil said, we are one people who will continue to create our nation. And so we talked about the case of Pueblo-a-Pueblo, sure, as maybe that's our struggle. But at the center of it is that we have to have autonomy and control of our lives. And in this economic topic, as other folks have said, You know, when it comes to the land, the organization of agriculture, production, distribution, consumption, we need to really understand our culture, our music. You know, it's a question of a nation, of a people. And then our nations will go as far as the people go, because the nation does not commit suicide. The nation is constructed. Here in Venezuela, our nation, our revolution is going to go as far as the people take it. And that's the thing. In thousands of years, we will talk about the stories of these different struggles. If Jalil, of Pueblo-a-Pueblo, and the great responsibility that we took on, and the references that we created in our constellations, right? Against these criminal actors, against this, you know, how are they calling this war? You know, as you mentioned, right? 1 million of deaths, right, in Iraq. Here, there are children who are literally starving here in our nation, you know, but our nation decided to get on the shoulders of giants, on the shoulders of this revolution, and therefore we are invincible, because whether it's Chavez, Zamora, Gomorrah, it's our responsibility to decide what we are doing today. And today we are communicating, and this needs to be permanent. Our struggle, we need to make the effort. I was just mentioning it to our comrades. We are going to save the planet. Let's return to our humanity. You know, and right now in the campaign, right now we're having campaigns around nutrition. And when we see the data of how many people in the world are hungry and how much food goes to waste, and so we sit here and we say, well, all right, what are the mechanisms? Is taking it and being there with the people day to day. And so I'm super grateful that we're here today, inspired by the presence of y'all coming here and being here with us as one nation, and also from one people to another. And obviously we have a lot of work in front of us in our particular territories and in this particular historical moment. But this is the task we take so that our future generations can remember our lessons, can remember our joy, our hip hop, our music. And so from here, we send you a big hug, and we hope that, you know, I hope every month, every Wednesday, or every once in a while, we can actually be in communication and amplify our struggles in our work together, and that we find a rhythm. Wednesdays at 6 o'clock, we connect. And so thank you, hugs, and much solidarity. Anna, just a few minutes if you can speak. Yeah. Well, after everything everybody has said, wow, what can I contribute? I think it's been a really rich space to be in, and it's super important. It's important, it's historic, and just understanding the trajectories of our struggles here in Pueblo-a-Pueblo, people to people, and even before that, and also the trajectories in the United States that our comrades mentioned, in the United States, of the Black Panthers. And that's such a powerful point of reference. And I think at the end of the day, our trajectories, you know, a good part of what's been mentioned here has to do with that, with understanding that this is the way that we create solidarity internationally, that from here, you know, we can really begin to amplify our political work. And we understand we are anti-colonial, anti-empire, anti-capitalist, anti-racist. And that's been from our experience and our practice here in people to people, nation to nation, is to also understand that in the framework of how hunger is used as a weapon of war against our people. And you know, we see that in the actions that the empire has attempted to execute against our people, against our nation. And we also see how that's reproduced even right now in Brazil, which is where I am. We see that this whole process of developing neoliberalism and developing capitalism and the quote, quote, economic development literally means that people go hungry and that the Mother Earth is violated. And so we have to understand those connections and those relationships between the hunger and the development of these agricultural corporations, and also the erasure of the Amazons, and the displacement of indigenous nations, and the Afro descendant nations, the Black nations. And so we have to understand those connections as part of the solidarity, and just to activate and share the different actions and strategies that we're taking. And for example, just being able to share our stories and our clear tasks and the work that's lying ahead of us, and being clear on what tasks we're going to take on, and also seeing what capacity we have to support one another in these different projects, and sustaining the resistance that we have against the empire. And for example, seed saving is a concrete step that responds to the situation and the injustice, the agricultural injustice that we're living. And that's a way to develop food sovereignty, which is fundamental for the struggle at hand. And I think that that's what we're already doing, and so we just need to reinforce and continue moving forward. And we are in the struggle together in all of our different territories. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you, Laura and Gabriel. Did you also wanted to add anything to this proposal of international solidarity?
Sí, rapidito.
Yes, just quickly. We need to obviously continue meeting, and also to value the idea that we could create a school to train folks in between the Jericho movement and the Pueblo-a-Pueblo movement. So it would be really incredible to incorporate. It's incredible to hear about the experience of the people in Colombia. We were able to go last year. I'm sorry, the audio continues cutting out. And to learn about the food sovereignty that they're working on in Colombia. And to be able to create space together. And so, with the technology that we have in our hands now, to be able to share the food sovereignty lessons that we've learned. We actually are creating our own seeds to be able to share. And so we have a lot of experience with a lot of different types of seeds, and how can we exchange? How could we exchange with other comrades, with other countries? We have a law here, and Esquisa also mentioned it. And this was a law that was written by the people. It's the law of in defense of the seed. The most important thing for us is how we can work using technology, using the exchange, and share seeds. The seed is really the base so that we can continue this fight for our people.
I think that's of utmost importance, and I think that, again, we have to have practical applications of that, and the sister was just speaking how we have to also utilize, technology and the internet and all of that, and I fully agree with that. But there's one thing I really want to say. Maybe I should keep this till the end. If you allow me just 3 minutes, okay? That sometimes it gets to be too much heartbreak, too much sorrow, but we must also celebrate the positive in order for us to keep strengthening each other. The violence and terror and fascism are not the only thing in our lives. We must never stop celebrating the God that is in us. Don't let the oppressors and fascists take our joy away. They want to keep us in despair, knowing that defeats and depletes our spirit to fight against their evils. Even in the midst of fighting back, we must experience joy. It is what charges our collective batteries. Never let them take our joy away, y'all. Even that is resistance.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mama C. I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I feel like everyone else appreciated those words too. Yeah.
Let me just add a couple of things.
Please do, Jalil.
Very quickly, very quickly, right? One is this: we will continue to build what we call decolonization programs, right? We need to decolonize our minds. We need to build organizations within our communities that serve our people, right? And when I was back in the Black Panther Party, they had what we call survival programs pending the revolution, right? Survival pending the revolution. What I'm saying now, we need to build colonization programs as part of the revolution. Right, as part of raising or empowering our people in our community to be self-sufficient and become independent as best as we possibly can. We become autonomous. I think one of the comrades said that we need to build autonomy, right? And that's what we're trying to do with the decolonization programs. Another thing that I want to raise up is what we comrade talked about. Brother Dest. Brother Dest, he talked about our political prisoners and the Jericho movement. Jericho movement has been in existence for 22 years now, right? The premier organization that supports political prisoners in the United States. But not only do we support political prisoners in the United States, we support political prisoners in other parts of the world as well, like in Palestine, like in Colombia, and like in other parts. We support Alex Al-Saab, right, in his struggle to be free and his incarceration here. And that. So one of the things we want to do in terms of that, in terms of Jericho, is raise up the political prisoners throughout the world. And that's another way that we can build solidarity, right? I say, in everyone in this country and throughout the world, right, who has political prisoners, raise them up. Raise up the political prisoners, right? Because they are a major representative of the struggle of resistance. That's why they're political prisoners, okay? So we raise them and we build solidarity around the political prisoners. We build solidarity around the movements that the political prisoners represent, right? Right? That's a practical way. As Mama C said, we have some practical ways of building solidarity. And that's one of the ways we can do so, by raising the names of our political prisoners around the world, right? And consolidate that understanding that we are against a common enemy around the world, right? And we do that, we begin to free ourselves, free our minds, and our understanding of the struggle that we engaged in, right? Decolonization programs support our political prisoners. In the spirit of Mandela, we are building to our Senate, the People's Senate, right? And then in Jericho, we continue to build outward in terms of support of political prisoners, both nationally and internationally, and as well as I'm trying to also do with my book, right? We're all liberators. We're going to build decolonization programs so we can build a front for the liberation of the New African nation here in the United States. Right? This is here in Turtle Island. I keep saying the United States. I don't want to say that word anymore. With Turtle Island, let's change this. Let's change the dynamic. Let's change the reality of what we're doing here. Okay, and it's important to use language. Because language interprets our world. Interprets our world. So let's talk about Turtle Island. Right? And in so doing, we began to understand a new fabric, a new understanding of the struggle that we engaged in. And what 400 years of white supremacy has done, not only to us here in the United States, but here in Turtle Island, but throughout the world. 400 years of white supremacist oppression against people of color around the world. We have to end it, and end it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jalil, for those words at the end of our session with our speakers. We appreciate y'all a lot for speaking on what y'all have. I wanted to leave us 10 minutes for questions, and we can put our questions in the chat. I think that's the cool way to do it. So if anyone has questions, we can put them in the chat. And if they're directed to a specific presenter, okay, Cyrus, you guys a question. And if they're directed to a specific presenter, you can ask that to a specific. If the interpreters could read it, if it's in English, if it's directed to a specific person, that would be helpful. Or if I can I can read the question, and if it's in English and interpret it.
Peace. I think maybe I could just say it and it could be interpreted, and maybe we could do another one or something after.
Please.
I was just thinking, like a huge issue that goes on in this country and across the world is the distribution of land ownership. Who's owning the land, whether it's the government, whether it's white owned or wealthy owned people. And so many people don't have access to land ownership. And I wanted to direct this question to Gabriel, Laura, or anyone else from the Pueblo-a-Pueblo program. if they could go in a little bit on the specifics of how they were able to free land in their territories, as well as potentially just talk about maybe some resources that we could learn from to just further study after this webinar. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, this is Laura. Fundamentally for us, in our case, as Ricardo said, we were able to, in our experience with our organizations, through our committee of the land, we could actually insert ourselves into government spaces, and we could use the mechanisms that before were used by landowners. We were able to change them and use them in favor of the peasant fight, of the campesino fight. And this is something that Commander Chavez, between 2004 and 2005, they created the Zamora. Zamora was a general who fought for land, and what Zamora did during the federal war is that he burned the ministries. He burned the registries, where he actually burned the documents. And so they were able to burn the records showing who was the owners of the land. And so we were able actually to go with lawyers. We did a really deep investigation. And with the documentation that we found, the legal documentation along with social pressure, we found that there were more than 100 committees for land that started to organize and create that pressure. They organized marches, they submitted requests, and they started studying. And so this helped us build that kind of pressure. And along, of course, with the legal arguments, and that's what allowed us to be successful. This is Gabriel, and I just want to add one more thing. The strategy that we used in our struggle, in the campesino struggle of Hirajara in 2004, this was when the Bolivarian Revolution, there was, they were able to take a breath. This was after 4 or 5 years of government. And they had been tried to take Chavez out of power. And what this allowed to start, this is what it allowed us to really start to rescue land, to recover land. So we did, massive protests, millions of people, thousands of people.
En el momento que el movimiento campesino Hirajara agarra.
In the moment where this campesino Hirajara movement goes, we use it to continue putting pressures, which even in 2004, there was people who were in those institutions that were against the agricultural and peasant movements. And so there was people from those sectors that went into 17 different institutions in government, in the environmental struggle, the technical struggle, and even in the struggle to occupy and reclaim land. And so the different organizations in these different, there's the reality that there's these companies that hire assassins to exploit and extort and murder peasants, and who are tied in with drug cartels. And so we came up with a certain decree, with 20 or 30 other directives. And this is a decree that allows us to reclaim and have back, occupy and retake hectares of land. And then we have the institutions who lend, who give credit lines to give them economic power. And so we are working together as a revolutionary bloc in favor of the people. And so what would we do? The people would go in to the land with that decree, but we need to know a difference. There's a difference between being a government and the power of the state. What Chavez did,
miembro de la máxima del Estado actuaba en contra. Eso la gente tiene que saber.
so the people need to understand the difference, because there's a lot of people who said, oh, Chavez just gave people, gave anybody land. And that's not the truth. There was a whole process in favor of peasants, definitely, but people had to apply and be part of that revolutionary process in mobilizing, in producing, and reclaiming the land.
Las judiciales actuaban en contra.
So there is this question that's very complicated. And so 200,000 agricultural workers and peasants who were in this movement. So we culminated with this. When they would detain a peasant, when the police detained them, we would apply, but basically they would not be able to apply the criminal legal codes against people who were part of this revolutionary process. People, if they were arrested, would end up being released in freedom. And so this is the rescue of the land and the territory in Venezuela.
Sí, gracias. Gracias. Okay. Thank you for the interpretation, Joel. And thank you to our interpreters, especially. We had, I just want to respect everyone's time. The webinar is for 2 hours. Our interpreters have been working very hard this whole time to interpret this webinar for us. And unfortunately, we were only able to ask one question through the webinar, but I just wanted everyone to give their gratitude for the interpreters and for our speakers and presenters and everyone who organized this webinar, and everyone who participated in this webinar. I would like for y'all to give your around your gratitude to them. So thank you to everyone for being here. I'm gonna go ahead and close the webinar and just say thank you to everyone. And I'm looking forward to continuing to build international solidarity. I just want to be mindful of everyone's time, and it's particularly our interpreters who have been interpreting for the last almost 3 hours continuously. So
Pueblo de Pueblo, all power to the people.
All power to the people.
All power to the people. International solidarity. All power to the people. Pueblo de Pueblo. People to the people.
God to the people. Free the land. Free them all.
Blessings, power.
Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for being here.
All power to the people. Free the land.
Free the land.
One more time, shout out to the interpreters, bro. Again, one more time. Give it up to them because they've been interpreting for almost 3 hours. You feel me? So let's leave it at that. Thank you, everybody. Gracias para todos.
Muchas gracias para todos.
Salud.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Let's do it again.
Salud.
Hasta pronto. Hasta pronto.
Thanks to all.
Thank you, Mama. Thank you.
Hasta la próxima.
Se repita.
Gracias por todos.
Gracias.
We love y'all.